Does it make you proud that the main protagonists on either side are Oxford alumni?
I'm proud of two of them. I'm not sure about the other two, and particularly since their regard for the truth seems to be sort of Alan Clark-like. They do seem to economise on the verite to a considerable extent.
Let's talk about how the campaign's going in your view. Through some of those people, I was looking back at some of the archive, and there's a wonderful shot of you coming down the stairs of Central Office in about 1992, I think it was. And following you is a young man wearing red braces who's recognisable as David Cameron. What do you think about his contribution to all of this? For a start, we wouldn't be having a referendum were it not for him. Was that a good move?
Well, I think we wouldn't be having a referendum were it not for the way that this psychodrama has engulfed the Conservative Party ever since the ERM debacle, and I suppose ever since Margaret Thatcher left the leadership. I think she was got rid of because of the poll tax rather than Europe, but that's another matter. I think David Cameron is incomparably the best qualified person to be Prime Minister. I'm not known to be terribly servile in my attitude to people, but I think he's clever. He's got good judgment, and if anybody can put this wreckage back together again after. I hope we voted in favour of staying in the European Union, then it's him. I just hope we don't go through all this again.
Another referendum?
Yeah, I worry that for a lot of the Brexiteers, in a sort of spittle-flecked way, this is a never-endum, not a referendum.
What do you make of Boris Johnson's contribution? Jean-Claude Juncker has said that he's making stuff up.
Yes, of course he is, but he always has. The one thing which is absolutely dependable is that anything that Boris says, you can find him saying the opposite only weeks or months ago. So that I don't take his intellectual contribution to this campaign, though he's a perfectly clever man. I think one of the things he resents is that he didn't get as good a degree as David Cameron. But Boris just makes it up as he goes along. And you come across people like that. There's a sense in which you can't call Boris a liar. I think he's one of those people in life who simply doesn't really understand the difference between fact and fiction. And he'll make a good joke by saying something, or if he can write a newspaper article by referring to Hitler and the European Union, he does it, and he doesn't think about it. But he'll be saying the opposite in a few months' time. But Boris is Boris. Tommy Cooper was Tommy Cooper.
You know what Boris Johnson would say if he was sat here? He would say Chris Patten, he was somebody who advocated us joining the euro. We'd all be in a much bigger mess if he'd had his way. Why should we listen to him on this matter?
Actually, what I was really in favour of, I don't want to get into complicated details, was a common currency rather than a single currency. I agreed with John Major about that, and there is a difference. But I'm put my hand up. But everybody occasionally makes a mistake, and I think I was wrong about that. Though it's worth making this additional point that I think if we had joined the euro, it might have avoided some of the mistakes that have been made since.
As a former chairman of the Conservative Party, how does David Cameron bring the party back together again?
If we leave, that's it. That's fall on your sword time.
David Cameron has to go.
Well, I think it would be very difficult for him. Are people like Mr. Gove and Mr. Johnson and Mr. Duncan Smith, once the quiet man of British politics, happy days, are they all going to require Mr. Cameron to go cap in hand around Europe for the next few years, trying to negotiate new trade deals and new agreements with the European Union? I don't know. If we vote to stay in, which I hope we do, he'll have to balance managing the party with making sure that people recognise his authority. I'm sure he'll know now, to borrow a phrase of Ken Clarke's, or a metaphor of Ken Clarke's, that there are some people on the right, you give them a bun today and they come back for 2 buns tomorrow. I mean, it's like playing Danegeld. So I think some people will have to be made aware of the fact that you can only have one boss at a time. But he'll have to try to bring the party together. It will be easier if, as I said earlier, it'll be easier if people accept the result and accept that we don't go on with this debate forever.